Today I'm going to talk about one initiative at the National Institutes of Health. It's not even all of data science at NIH. Still, the vast majority of data science at NIH is funded through the usual R01 programs where it's unsolicited grants, but we do have this one initiative that is a little bit unusual, and that's what I will talk about today. It's called the Big Data to Knowledge Initiative, BD2K. So BD2K is unusual in that it's trans NIH. So usually the institutes are very independent. They have their own budgets, their own directors, they pretty much do whatever they want and don't really act as a group. But in this case around data science, they did come together and they realized that they have these common problems and that it would make sense to have the institutes, the NIH institutes, come together in order to attack those common problems in data science. So they all contribute money to a pot, and then that pot gets spent in this Big Data to Knowledge program. But I'm not even going to talk today about the whole of BD2K. I'll just give some highlights of it. But first, I know it's been a long morning, and it's a great morning, wonderful talks, but I stand between you and lunch. So I'm going to make this easy on you and give you the talk in a nutshell. And here it is. This is the talk in a nutshell, is that data science really is becoming increasingly necessary for biomedical science. NIH is doing something about it. We have this Big Data to Knowledge initiative, and it's started a couple years ago, and it's still ongoing. We still have more plans for it. So that's the summary. So first, though, I'll unpack what I mean here about when I say biomedical science. What I really mean is everything in the NIH realm. So that could be biological, biomedical, behavioral, clinical, translational, epidemiological. When I say biomedical, I mean all of that. So what do I mean by data science? Now this one's harder because I don't think that we as a community have a complete understanding and agreement about what data science is. So what do we mean by data science? Let's try to define it. Well, one way we could define it is by saying, what do researchers and practitioners who call themselves data scientists do? And this is, for example, in art. You have an artist who says, whatever I do is art, so this is art. And who am I to judge, because I'm not an artist, who am I to judge whether this is art or not, as opposed to just a bunch of thrift shop castaways. But someone way more qualified than me has judged that this is art. And I know that because it's in a museum in the Netherlands. So we could think about data science this way and go around and ask data scientists, what do you do? So you could go to a biomedical informatics department, and you might hear someone say, I build tools to make collecting metadata easier. I'm a biomedical data scientist. You could go to a library, and I might hear, I curate large amounts of biomedical data, so I'm a biomedical data scientist. You could go to a computer science department, and you hear, I make methods and tools that scale to large amounts of data and run really fast, and I'm a biomedical data scientist. Then you go into a biomedical department, and you hear that I take my computer science colleagues' tools, and I run it against the data that I collected in my lab, and I get a Nature paper out of it, and so I'm a biomedical data scientist. And then you go to the statistics department. And sometimes in statistics departments, you hear that I develop principled methods to make predictions and to do inference using data. I'm a statistician. We know that statistics is a really important part of data science, incredibly important part, but we have a bias here of how people self-select to be called data scientists. So I don't think this is a really good way of defining data science because of this bias. Instead, we could look at a different way. So another way of doing this, my background is in training. I developed the BD2K training program. And one way we can look at it is to go to see, what do we teach our students who are trying to be the next generation of biomedical data scientists? So I could go around to all the biomedical data science departments around the country and ask, what do you teach your graduate students? Well, that's Stanford, Dartmouth, there just aren't many of them. But we do have other departments that are giving PhDs to people who will be the next generation of biomedical data scientists. They're just not in biomedical data science departments yet. Instead, they are tracks, training program tracks within existing PhD programs. So there are a bunch of these around the country, and I know this because we put out a funding opportunity announcement for it, and we asked for people who, institutions like Michigan to apply for this. And we've funded 16 of them so far. And here's what those 16 teach their students. They are listed here in order from the most common to the least common. So of these 16 programs, they almost all require a whole course in probability and statistics and a whole course in intro computer science or bioinformatics, so generally a programming type course. Most of them require a separate course in machine learning. Half of them require a second CS course, usually in algorithms, and then half of them require, not a separate half, but some overlap here. Half of them require a second statistics course, and I've just titled that advanced modeling, but it's generally a more advanced type of statistics, separate from machine learning. And then some of them require data visualization, data management, reproducibility, experimental design, and privacy and ethics. And these are just whole classes. The ones that don't have whole classes in these less common topics, surely put them in, intersperse them in other classes. But this is what the 16 programs that we have that are claiming to be producing PhDs in biomedical data science are requiring of their students. So that's what we could take as one definition of biomedical data science. And then finally, what do I mean by increasingly necessary? Well, here, what I mean is that more sophisticated methods are both being needed and utilized. But utilization of the methods is not the same as understanding the methods. And as we saw from Al's slides this morning, the number of computer packages is increasing rapidly. And not only are they increasing in number, but they're easier to use. So we have this, on the one hand, we have computer packages that are really easy to use. You could hit very complicated methods against your data. And on the other hand, we have very complicated methods that are hard to understand. And so there's this mismatch between the ease of use and the difficulty of understanding what's inside of those methods and what the methods actually mean. So because of this, we have a very big training problem. And for this reason, training has been a huge part of the BD2K program from the beginning. So next, I want to just say a little bit about what we've done in BD2K already and what we're planning on doing. So the first thing that was done was to develop a leadership structure and then to increase the funding. So a couple years ago now, Phil Bourne was hired as the first NIH Associate Director for Data Science. He was brought in as the lead and the point person, and he is being advised by the Scientific Data Council, which is made up of institute directors or their appointees. So that's the leadership part of it. Then there was a commitment for funding, a multi-year commitment for funding to the tune of about $100 million a year. This initially focused on research and training. So those research and training awards have been given out for the last 3 years now, and we have almost 150 awards scattered across the country, and they range across the diversity of areas in data science, everything I had mentioned before, plus very specific topics in things like compression and data wrangling. And they really do span the breadth of NIH research as well. So these utilize centers and cooperative agreements, for the smaller awards, training programs, individual awards to early career investigators and educational projects. But what I'm going to spend more time on today is some of the more unusual things that we're doing. So one of the unusual things is called the Open Science Prize. The Open Science Prize is an international prize competition that we're doing joint with the Wellcome Trust and the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. So it is a competition for ideas. We had about 100 teams submit ideas for basically things that will help other people to utilize open content and open data. So things like services, tools, or platforms that enable somebody else to utilize that open data. We got 100 submissions. Of those 100 submissions, 6 were chosen as phase 1 winners. Those 6 winners got a small amount of money in 6 months. And their 6 months is up on December 1st, at which time they will present a prototype of their idea. And then you, the public, will be able to vote on which of these is most exciting and most useful to you. And then from that, a grand prize winner would be announced. So this project showcases a couple of things that we're interested in. One is encouraging open content, open data and open content. And another is working internationally, because we know that open data can and should be used across the world, but yet our funding streams tend to be very national. And we're interested in working internationally in order to make sure the data and the tools are useful for everyone. Another thing that we're doing is called an innovation lab. So innovation labs are 1-week residential workshops that bring together junior investigators of different types. So in this case, we're bringing together junior data scientists and junior biomedical scientists. And the purpose of the lab is to decrease the barriers to forming interdisciplinary teams and to accelerate the development of their research programs. So we've done this twice now. The first time, the focus was on precision medicine, and the second time, the focus was on mHealth. We have another one planned for this summer, and this summer it will focus on the microbiome. So what happens? We bring together these junior investigators. They first look around the room, get to know what expertise is in the room, and then they collectively just come up with what are the big problems in this space. Then they collectively iterate on those problems and work on them in order to get out wild and crazy ideas. And then they refine those ideas. They do this under the direction of mentors. So the mentors are senior investigators in their field from across data science and biomedical science who selflessly give up a week of their time to come live with the junior investigators and essentially help them go through a peer review process really fast. So instead of submitting a grant application and getting your response, your written comments back 6 months later, these teams come up with their idea, they write it up quickly, or they describe it quickly to the mentors, they get the feedback within a day or day and a half time, and they iterate through these. So outcomes of it. We know that this was a success. And the reason we know it was a success is we've been through a whole round of it already. We had, in the first lab, by the time the teams are done with that week, they basically have a grant application in hand. And we had a grant competition. They submitted their grants, and in addition, we had people from the public who did not go to the Innovation Lab submit their grants. And the success rates for the ones who went through the Innovation Lab were much higher. And so what's the key to success here? Well, it's the mentors. They, being very senior people in their field, they know what a good research program looks like and how to write it in a grant application. They give that feedback to the teams and help them quickly come up with very competitive applications. We have 2 of the mentors here in the audience, Ji-Hung Lin and Todd Coleman, both of whom will be talking this afternoon. but I just want to point them out since they were in the lab this past year. So this innovation lab is something that we have planned and have done a couple times and are planning in the future. So far though, we've talked about leadership and funding for research and training, but what we had not done yet at NIH really is to focus on the infrastructure for the research. So that's really where we're starting to look into now, to continue the training, but expanding it out to the whole workforce as opposed to just the students, and then also to build infrastructure. And that infrastructure is in the form of the Commons. So what is the Commons? It's a shared virtual space for digital objects, where digital objects are any output of research, any digital output of research, so such as the data or the software or even papers. The Commons is a platform that enables people to find that data, deposit the data, manage it, share it, and reuse the data and any other digital object. Those digital objects conform to the FAIR principles, and the FAIR principles being findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So the Commons has different layers. It's a platform, so it sits upon a compute platform, and on top of that, there's the data and software, and those data and software conform to the FAIR principles, and which is the digital object compliance. So if we're successful with the Commons, then we will have a co-location of both the data and the tools on top of the compute, so that you do not have to move the data in order to compute on it. It'll allow investigators to collaborate, so it'll allow an investigator here in Michigan to bring her ideas and her methods and collaborate with someone from Chapel Hill who collected the data, and they can work on the data where it is. And if we're successful, we will also have an easy way through the grant system to pay for this. The other thing that we're focusing on now is workforce development. We have several efforts going on. One is in increasing the amount of data science that the general biomedical scientist sees. So we have a funding opportunity out about this right now where we're giving curriculum development awards as long as the institutions are willing to collaborate and willing to work together in order to develop that data science curriculum. We also have a lecture series going on, once a week virtual lecture series called the BD2K Guide to the Fundamentals of Data Science, which meets on Fridays at noon virtually, where we have people from across the country who are giving lectures in their field of expertise. In addition, we have, through the Training Coordination Center at the University of Southern California, we have the Road Trip program. This is a program where we're trying to encourage collaborations between junior biomedical scientists and senior data scientists. And the Coordination Center matches up those groups and gives them a little bit of money to seed the collaboration. And then I mentioned before the Innovation Lab, and there is a follow-on grant program that is joint with NSF called the Cubed program. So for more information about these two things, you could go to the Training Coordination Center's website, which is bigdatau.org. In addition, NIH is looking into developing funding of different workshops, one on career paths and another on through the National Academies to discuss issues in data science training and education. So just to wrap up, what I've talked about today is NIH and things that NIH is doing, but if we are to be successful, it takes an entire community, and NIH is just a very small part of that research community. We need to all work together in order to create a world where we have we have the expertise within the biomedical workforce in order to take full advantage of the data. So if we're successful, we'll have biomedical scientists who understand enough about data science to understand that there are complications and to understand that as they collect their data, they need to be collected according to standards. As they share their data, they need to share the appropriate metadata. As they analyze the data, there are choices and there are complications. In an ideal world, we'd have biomedical scientists who can do the basic analyses themselves, but more importantly, they will know when the basic analyses do not apply and when they need to seek additional help. And they seek that help in biomedical data scientists. In an ideal world, we'd have enough biomedical data scientists to work with all the people who need their help. And we'd have those biomedical data scientists who take all different types of roles, from members of the team to leaders of parts of the team to leaders of the entire project. So I think as we move forward in this world where data science is increasingly necessary for biomedical science, and as we collectively define the field of biomedical data science, our two goals should be appreciation and understanding. So first, understanding the breadth of data science, that it goes from knowing how the data were collected to knowing how the data is stored and retrieved, to knowing how to analyze the data, to knowing how to visualize the data and to make interpretations from it. And then we need to appreciate that we each bring different things to the table, that even though we may all be called biomedical data scientists, we all have our specialties, and we need to understand what people in other specialties within biomedical data science bring to the table and know when to draw them in. Because we, as biomedical data science, will be representing our field to the domain scientists. And when we represent data science to them, we need to be able to explain to them what the power of data science is. Thank you.
Talking about national data exchange market, so where people trade data to facilitate data exchange. Now, there has been a lot of discussion on